Hello, Bulls fans, and welcome to the CHGO Bulls Podcast here on a Thursday with me, Mark K from Australia, and always joined by the most handsome man in the beat writing game. It is William Gottlieb. William, how are you, sir?
I'm all right, but I gotta say, normally we do these on Friday, and
Yeah.
so just internally, I thought that it was Friday, and you've just reminded me it's only Thursday. So,
Well, I was
thanks for
going
that.
to lead
Thanks
with
for
the
that,
fact
Mark.
that it is
I mean, it's Friday
Friday.
for you, so
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I was about to go, oh, it's Friday. That's how I was going to introduce it all. But then I was like, oh, no, that's only for me and, some of the other internationals out there, not necessarily those for you who are in Chicago, but that's fine. It doesn't matter where you are, William, because you can be a diehard of Chicago sports and CHGO. And I think people should do that. And you know why I think people should do that, William? Because our
tell the people
CHGO
why.
diehard membership sale is on right now. People, get your hands on that. Generally speaking, you're paying $79.99 for a yearly membership. Right now with this sale, it's only $59.99. What a deal. What a bargain. Chicago sports, that's what it's all about, friends. Come hang out with William and I and the rest of the crew. Support CHGO and do so at a discounted rate. Like, that is a win-win proposition, surely, if I've ever seen one.
Too easy, as you like to say. Too easy.
Too easy indeed. But William, what are we discussing today?
Well, not much going on in the world of the Chicago Bulls. No major injuries, sidelining star players for multiple weeks. No first 3-game win streak of the season. So yeah, all is quiet. No, we have a lot to talk about here today. Zach met with us with the media this morning after it was announced last night by the team after the game that he would require an additional 3 to 4 weeks to treat his ailing foot. So we've got some updates from the Advocate Center, as well as, just some conspiracy theories that are floating about, and we'll give our takes on those. And then, the team's playing well. So what does that mean for the future? We do have actually a good amount of stuff to get into here.
Yes, definitely. But we've got to start with the Zach LaVine news. And I guess the first question I have, William, do you think he hurt his foot on the way out of the United Center, like as when he was demanding a trade or putting through his soft trade request, or
he just jammed it on the way out the door.
Yeah.
So all we know is that it flared up. He said he's been dealing with it for a while, but it flared up in that game against the Celtics, that 27-point loss in the final in-season tournament game. And he hasn't played since then. So he's been out 3 full games plus the majority of that one. The team is now 3-0 without him. He said that it was inflammation in the outer side of his right foot. So I think a lot of people are kind of like questioning the severity of this because it's like right foot soreness, but there's some, potential damage that can be done if he ramps it up too much. And he said, like, I wanted to be out there. I tried to get up for the game yesterday against the Hornets, but as he was ramping up things, he just kind of had a setback. And so not healing as quickly as he wants. And he's actually been doing a lot of resting for his rehab, but he also just got a PRP injection, which is a big deal. And I think that kind of speaks to how much this is actually, holding him back. I know we'll kind of get into it, but I know people are kind of trying to connect the dots here with all the trade noise and the trade rumors. Guys are not getting PRP injections if they're not actually hurt. So I'm viewing this as, appropriate to the 3 to 4 week timetable, right? I mean, I think that lines up with a lot of those trade dates, but this definitely feels very real to me.
Yeah, and it's possible for 2 things to be true at one time. Like, he clearly is hurt. He clearly had this procedure of sorts. He's not flying with the team to San Antonio because of this procedure. So, yeah, clearly something is ailing him. But at the same time, it is very convenient, or at least ironic, that this is occurring as a side piece to the whole trade thing. And we all know, based on the fact that what we've discussed here on the podcast, but anywhere else you've consumed any other NBA media and people talking about Zach LaVine trade, the fact that 80 to 90% of the league is eligible for trade post December 15. All of the league is, or the majority of the league is then eligible for trade post January 15. We all know the permutations of this. So it's just it's interesting nonetheless, I suppose, that this is occurring at the same time. And I understand why some people may be dubious of it all. But at the same time, I think we can be good enough to at least take Zach for his word. And if not for his word, then the actions of the Bulls medical staff, in the sense that this is a thing that has occurred. They're not going to be just juicing up his foot full of injections just for the sake of it. He's dealing with something. And it's just, yeah, again, interesting that it's occurring at the time when he supposedly is okay with a move occurring. In that respect, it's interesting because we may have seen Zach LaVine played his last game as a Bull. That's definitely on the cards at this point. So there's a lot of ways we can, I guess, take it. But let's start from his media performance today, William, which you're in attendance to. He obviously alluded to the fact that the injury re-aggravated itself, that there's a rehab plan, that he had that PRP injection. He made that all very clear. But I think what you have noted here in the rundown, and I think anyone who listened to or read the quotes, the money quote was the fact that Zach sort of alluded to the fact, well, he didn't dismiss the whole trade thing, right? That was the first takeaway from my point of view. But the key thing was that the noise or the scuttlebutt or the rumors that people need to be addressing is not, well, it's not just him that should be addressing that. That he insinuated that almost both sides of the deal, being him, LaVine, his representation, but also the Bulls, are the ones that are maybe pushing this storyline and the fact that this storyline exists. So what were your takeaways from the ground when he sort of mentioned that or hinted that?
Well, I think the first thing is just kind of going back to the severity of the injury. Like, Zach does not like missing time. He played through the knee injury 2 seasons ago that he ultimately had to have that scope done during the offseason. He played through a thumb injury. He does not like to miss time. And he even said it like, I don't pull punches. I want to play through everything. And look, like, you could just say, well, of course he's going to sit there and say that on the, at the media stand, because he's got nothing to lose. Like, he doesn't want to make it look like he's just pouty. And especially with the way that the team is playing, maybe it's coincidence, maybe it's not, that the team has kind of started to play a lot better here of late. Like I said, they're 3-0 in games in the last 3 games, 3-1, including that game to Boston, which Zach got injured. But yeah, I mean, for him, it's like he obviously had to address this idea that this could be his last game as a Bull. He said that he's not really looking at it that way. He's just trying to get healthy, and kind of expressed a commitment to trying to help the team however he can, as long as he's wearing the jersey. He had an opportunity to deny the trade rumors when they initially came out. He had an opportunity to deny them again today. But to me, first of all he said was like, I'm just thinking about coming back. I want to help these guys as much as possible. I'm happy for the team. And, I think he means that, but he just kind of seems like a guy to me who's trying to come back from an injury. He's got this foot soreness, and he kind of recognizes that this is the position that he's in. Like, there's not going to be a trade that happens. I think, maybe when they kind of released that initial report, he thought that there was going to be something happening quickly. That's not been the case. And it doesn't really seem like there's much market for him right now. And he seems like he's kind of aware and resigned to the fact that, he's got to continue to be here as long as he's here.
Yeah. And I think that, as the news dropped last night post-game, that Zach would be out 3 or 4 weeks. I think where everyone's mind went to, and we've even got someone, I think I missed it before, but there was someone in the comments suggesting that a deal has already been agreed to, that this is just maybe some posturing and they're holding Zach out for this reason. I don't necessarily believe that. As stated before, Zach is clearly hurt. I think that has been clearly demonstrated at this point. So I don't think that is necessarily just the case.
I mean, both things could be true. Like you said, there is a deadline where most of the league is eligible to be traded on December 15th. There's another deadline on January 15th where like 99% of the league is eligible to be traded. They may have something that they feel comfortable pulling the trigger on, but you're not able to press send yet. But Zach is also injured. So like both of those could be true at the same time.
Definitely. But I guess where I was going was, in the event that that isn't true, the piece around there being a deal in place and they're just waiting and holding out and keeping him out just to protect the trade type thing, assuming there isn't a deal in place, then, Woj has already gone out there and said that there isn't a market for Zach. Let's just assume that's the case. There is no market. There is no deal. what does Zach now being hurt and being out for a further 3 or 4 weeks do to said market? Well, I guess not much if you were to believe that there is no market. If there's no market, there's no market. But assuming there is one or there was one, I'm hopeful that this doesn't impact things, but I don't view this as a good thing for that market either. So it's interesting. You would hope that there is a deal in place because of that reason, that you don't want teams to be scared away from this. But assuming there isn't a deal, or maybe there was a deal and those deals are being revised now, given that Zach's potentially out 3 to 4 weeks at minimum, maybe it'll be longer. Who knows? I'm wondering now, like, how does this impact his trade? Well, I was going to say his trade request, but the team's desire as well to move Zach as well. So does this make it more difficult? I'm assuming so, but that, I guess, that precedes this idea that maybe there is or isn't a deal in place.
Yeah, I mean, we won't know unless like a deal gets done at 12:01 on the 15th of either December or January, whether that's like been locked and loaded. So it's just hard to say. But I think you're right that like the best thing for Zach, the best thing for the Bulls is the same outcome where he gets healthy and he plays super well and he makes everybody forget about this idea that the Bulls have won 3 straight games while he has been out of the lineup. And not only that, but he's playing better. He's healthy. He's looking good. And he figures to be a guy that teams would want to trade for if they want to get better. But I think that this whole like the conspiracy around it, I think, is really interesting. Obviously, I know a lot of people are like ready for this kind of era to be over. But to me, like the money quote of the whole thing, he said, "The storylines that are out there right now about me is on both." Something that wasn't completely said verbally to the media. Basically, my read on that and just like watching him say that, basically what he was saying is like, look, this is not just like me demanding out. This is like both sides. Both sides are ready to move on. And to me, it was, he goes on to say it's something that is behind closed doors, that a bunch of narratives can get spun around and said about me, and things and stories will be portrayed, but it's part of the business that comes with it. I think Zach is like, people are kind of pointing to him being pissed at Billy for benching him against the Magic. I think he's pissed that the Bulls tried to trade him this summer. I think he doesn't feel good about being on a team where he's being shopped around. And I think that's really where this whole, like, I don't want to call it an attitude thing, but like, that's where the friction really lies right now. I think that's why that's why, like, when Zach has said in the past, this happens to me, it's happened to me for the last 3 years. Like, well, no, the report that came out was your side is now open to it. And the reason that is, meaningful is because the Bulls were clearly already open to it. They were shopping him around. Now he's just getting on board with that. So one, I think like the Clutch, Rich Paul, Zach camp has put that out on purpose. And two, I think it's like time to move on, but there's no like obvious deals in place. And now they kind of they've both made their bed and now they kind of have to live in it here. And the injury stuff and holding him out, like there's pros and cons to it. I think the Bulls have a chance to now see what their team looks like without him a little bit more. But this whole idea that like Zach is just holding out or the Bulls are sending him home, I think there's a real possibility that he has played his last game with the Bulls, but I don't think this is just a send Zach home and move on without him before they actually get something done.
No, I agree with that part of it. Where I disagree with Zach on is that it's a two sides thing. Yes, ultimately both sides want to split, but and maybe Zach wants out now because the Bulls have been dangling him in trades in the offseason that just passed, as well as the deadline that just went through as well, the previous trade deadline of last season. But the question is, why are the Bulls doing that? And they're doing that not just because they want to trade Zach. There's some sort of disconnect that appears between Zach and AK or Zach and Billy, so whatever it may be. So there is a connection to this thing. It's not just, hey, I'm Arturas Karnisovas and I want to trade Zach, and then Zach getting angry, and it's a both sides type thing of both wanting a separation. Like, if Zach was doing the things that AK and Billy wants, whether that's fair or not, then are they really dangling him out in trades in the way that they have been in years past? I don't know if that's true. So he can sort of push that back to the franchise, and I'm reluctant to really defend the franchise for a host of reasons. But I don't think it's as simple as saying, hey, these guys are trying to trade me, therefore I want to be traded too because they don't want me, and then why do I want to be here type thing. Like, there's reasons for this team wanting to maybe push on from Zach. Some of them are fair, some of them are not. Some of them extend beyond his play on the court, but I don't think we can just ignore the element of what Zach has done on the court. And this isn't the first time that this sort of stuff has come up. There has been reasons or friction between Zach and the playing group, not necessarily, in any ill will as such, but there's been, like, if we go back to this time last year, there was the issues in the locker room whereby Zach and DeMar weren't on the same page from an execution standpoint. You referenced the game where I think it was the last December as well, when the Bulls played the Magic, where Billy benched Zach when he was 1 of 14 or whatever it was. There was that blow up in Minnesota after the Minnesota game where Goran Dragic went on record and spoke very candidly. It was pretty clear as to who he was talking about in those statements. So, yeah, I guess my point being, I don't think it's as simple as but the Bulls are done with Zach and Zach is done with the Bulls. I think there's reasons as to why it's gotten to this point, and I get the whole two sides thing, but I still lean more with the franchise here, which I feel a bit, funny doing. Like I said, I don't really want to defend the team in this instance, but I don't think Zach's without any fault in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a tough situation to be in if you're Zach. He's kind of following this clutch playbook of sign the deal, get the money, and then ask out. And he doesn't really have much leverage right here because, one, nobody really wants him. But two, I think, like, as much as we kind of talk about value and contracts around the league, like this new CBA penalty is really strong. And I think we've also talked about how the cap is going to continue to rise, and $40 million a year is not going to look quite as bad in the coming years when Jaylen Brown's making $65 million a year. But that's still a lot to swallow. I think teams are kind of more afraid of it before they really know how it affects them than they might be if they were already in it. So I think part of it is just Zach being kind of caught between a rock and a hard place where, yeah, the Bulls kind of want to move on from him for a variety of reasons. He's kind of come around on also wanting a change of scenery, but now he's like got to face the media with every injury that he has about, does this tie into your trade request? I just think there's kind of like a lot going on, and you kind of do feel for him in this situation, even though I think there's definitely fault on both sides of it as well.
Yeah, the part of his presser that I did find funny was how he was talking about this 3-game winning streak and talking about how the team has been playing, like the way they've been going about it, and how the fundamentals of what they've been doing in training camp, how that's starting to come through now and how it's working. I did smirk a few times when I read and listened to that piece because, and look, maybe it needed this amount of time. Maybe you needed 15 to 20 games for it to connect, and it connecting without him is just mere coincidence. But it happening without him when he was playing, I suppose there was clear examples where he wasn't buying into what the Bulls are doing now from an offensive standpoint, at least. And we can talk about the defensive ramifications of having LaVine, DeMar, and Vooch out there at one time, which you sort of take away when you have him out of the roster, have him out of the lineup, and you put more defensive units out there. But I did find that ironic again that he was kind of talking about, yeah, like this stuff's coming together now. And then when I do come back, I can find myself within this and reinsert myself within this. And, I'll be able to play my part within that. I don't know. Maybe this whole trade stuff has made me skeptical, and maybe, I don't know, not lose faith in Zach as a player because he's obviously extremely skilled and good. But I kind of also don't want to hear that at this point. It's like, okay, guy, well, why are we hearing this now? Why weren't you as a leader of this team, as one of the best offensive players on the team, enabling this sooner? So I don't know. It fell on deaf ears for me, but I'm also kind of biased at this point and kind of done with it. So that's my take on it. But I'm interested to hear what you thought of that concept of him returning and fitting in within what the team is doing on offense right now.
I mean, that's kind of what I'm talking about. He has to say that. He can't just like be pouty right now because that makes it so much worse. And I think, I've talked to a lot of the players in the locker room. They also feel that way too, both on and off the record, that Zach is going to be better in the way that they're playing. And I think the big question is like, why can't they figure out why they were playing so terribly before, why they weren't executing any of this stuff? And now all of a sudden the flip has switched. Like, I think to a certain point, you can't just have something happen to you like that. You have to understand why it was happening in the first place so that you can correct it when it inevitably happens again. I think that's a real problem that this Bulls team faces, is like they just don't seem to have any answers about how they're playing, about why they're not playing well when they're not. It's just like, does the ball go in or not? And you watch this team and it's like, you watch the body language, you watch the way that they're getting into sets, the pace, the tempo, whether or not they're getting out in transition on makes and misses. It's the kind of thing where like you wish that they had some more answers. And I do believe that Zach, will probably be a little bit more bought in when he does come back. And if he is playing for the Bulls, just because he has to be. And like I said, the best thing for him, the best thing for the team is for him to play well, because that will help, increase the amount of suitors out there. And yeah, I mean, I think he kind of has to say that, but I also think he, like I said, is aware of the fact that if this was like a done deal to get him wherever he wanted to go, it might already be done. And it's not. And I think that there's this realization from Zach and, the players too, that this might take a while. And, I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but like, is there a world where this just doesn't happen before the end of the year? You can't just like punt this season away because you're guaranteeing to yourself that you're going to get rid of Zach. Like AK is not going to just like dump him. I think that they have to get the right deal in order to move on. They also need to get something done because this situation is like pretty uncomfortable and awkward. But I'm not like under the impression that Zach is just done with this team right now. It really does seem like if he has to come back and play for this team again, that he will try to buy in. And like I said, I'm not sure why that wasn't happening before. And maybe it doesn't happen again, but just based on what I heard from him today, it seems like he's at least going to try. And it seems like the rest of the team wants that.
Yeah, I mean, they can say all those things, but
and exactly, they're not gonna like say anything else to the media. They have to.
No, and look, they can say all these things, they can do all these things, but actions speak louder than words. And when Zach was playing, the way he was going about it, the way the team more generally was reacting to the whole situation and playing through all the noise, yeah, like I said, actions speak louder than words. But nonetheless, I think you're correct. AK is not going to just deal with Zach just for the sake of it. He needs to grab himself a good deal, and hopefully a good deal presents itself. We'll be talking a little bit more about that in the next couple of segments. But whilst AK is waiting for a good deal for Zach, CHGO listeners, we've got some good deals for you, particularly as we head into this Christmas and the Festivus sort of season, the holiday season. And for those of you that are trying to be more health conscious and, eat actual nutritious meals and not just, the junk food that we all like to consume over the holiday season, well, friends, our friends at Factor, they're America's number one ready-to-eat meal deal service. They can help you fuel up for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, whatever it might be. If you want to get your hands on chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals, then the best part, that is all delivered straight to your door. If you want to save time, if you want to save money, if you want to eat well and keep your fitness goals on track through the holiday period, then Factor, they got the hook up, friends. So this is something I'm going to be trying to do, William. It's around about this time of year where I start to go off the rails. Now, to be fair, 2023 for me, more generally from a nutritional standpoint, has been somewhat off the rails. I've put on a few kilos or pounds, as you guys like to say, this year. I need to turn that around. So someone like Factor who can, hit me up with 45 odd different types of meals, protein-rich, beautiful meals, these sorts of things, calorie-smart meals where no more of their meals are greater than 550 calories. I know my friends at Factor are going to hook me up. So if you want to do that, friends, like I will be doing, then use promo code CHGO Bulls when you're heading out to Factor meals. 50% off when you do. What a deal. CHGO Bulls 50, and you will score yourself 50% off your first order with Factor. Take care of your body. Have a good holiday season, but eat well and feel well. That would be my advice. At least that's what I'm going to be trying to do. Having said that, William, when I am feeling cheeky and would like to have a beer, I would like to have a Goose Island.
I was just going to say, you got to cancel it out somehow. And if you're going to do it, may as well cancel it out with the frosty Goose Island beer, because Goose Island is Chicago's beer since 1988, but it's also CHGO's beer, our favorite sponsor here at CHGO. They're the honks for you. They've got an incredible roster, including Oktoberfest, which is still going strong, even though we're already into December. We're 7 or 8 days away from the December 15th deadline where some players can be traded for Zach LaVine. Oktoberfest still going strong. They've got the Beer Hug family, the 312 Wheat Ale, the Full Pocket Pilsner, your everyday beer. And it's what the Brewers are drinking. And it's also what Matt and Dave are drinking. Goose Island, if you want to let us know what your favorite beer is, shoot it into the comments. But for now, grab an ultra fresh brewery exclusive beer at the Goose Island Original Brew House on Clybourne Avenue in Lincoln Park, or from their tap room on Fulton Street in Westtown. Goose Island Beer Company, Chicago's beer, and CHGO's beer.
Beer and a factor meal. Sounds like a winning combination if I've ever heard of one. Chicago Bulls, Zach LaVine, not necessarily a winning conversation, William. But let us continue this this conversation amongst ourselves, among friends here on a Thursday evening. What are we doing here with Zach LaVine, William? We know he's out for 3 to 4 weeks, as we've discussed. He can't be moved for at least 8 days at minimum. Well, I mean, he could technically be traded now, but presumably a deal won't present itself before the next 8 days, possibly longer. Maybe we're holding out to after January 15. So at that point, what are we doing? What are we doing for the next 3 to 4 weeks? What are we doing thereafter when Zach is back and potentially healthy and ready to go? We touched on it before that Zach sort of spoke about him reintegrating himself in the event that that opportunity presents itself for him and the team. But what are we all really doing, I guess? Like, I'm sitting back here and just holistically thinking about where this team is at more generally. I think you and I are rebuilders. We want to see a tank happen. There are certain fans out there that don't want to see that happen, which I completely understand. But I'm just trying to make sense of it all and where Zach fits into this whole thing, where the trade fits into it all, where this 3-game sample of interesting wins fits into it all. Where do we take this conversation? I'm ready to go anywhere where you want to go, William, but there's a lot to consider.
So I think, there's definitely a lot to consider, but I think let's start in just the present and what we're seeing these last couple of games, what we expect to see for the foreseeable future here with Zach out of the lineup for the next 3 to 4 weeks. And by the way, with these like injury timelines, it's never he's going to be back in 3 to 4 weeks. He's going to be reevaluated then, and then there'll most likely be additional time for a ramp up and for him to get back into game shape. And 3 to 4 weeks puts us end of December, first week of January. And as we've said multiple times already, January 15th is the start date for trade season in earnest. So I think it's definitely likely that we won't see Zach again. Maybe not likely, but it's certainly a possibility that we don't see Zach again with the Bulls. And I think this is a really good opportunity to kind of let this team find themselves without Zach, understanding that, I think there is a small possibility that the Bulls just don't trade Zach this year because they don't want to salary dump him or they can't find any suitors or whatever it might be. I think that is a small possibility. But for the most part, we're looking at a future without Zach LaVine. And, AK reporting has shown that AK wants to assess the group. He's focused on moving Zach and then making decisions. This time is more data in that regard. And I think the more information you can get on how your team looks without Zach, the better. Obviously, like I said before, the best thing for Zach and for the Bulls right now is for Zach to be there healthy and playing well so that, that does open up some more trade possibilities. But kind of the silver lining of this is you let some of these younger guys get a little bit more in the way of touches, build their confidence. Like, to me, what I've seen from Io and Coby and Pat, even these last 3 games, and really even for guys like Coby and Pat, a little bit beyond that, they've just been playing a lot better. And Billy said this after the game last night. They've kind of been thrust into the situation with Zach missing time, with DeMar missing time, Caruso's missed time, where they have to step up and be, a bigger featured part of the offense. They have to have more responsibility on both ends. And I think that's really helped them build some confidence, especially the fact that they're winning games. And they need that confidence to be able to make the next play, to be able to keep the advantage alive, to be able to create the advantage in the first place. So I think this is really good for them. I think it also gives AK some opportunity to evaluate the talent that he has, stepping up into bigger roles. Like you think about what the 76ers have done this year with Maxey, kind of addition by subtraction, after moving Harden. Like, maybe there's a world where Coby really does keep this play up. I mean, I don't think he's going to be a 50% 3-point shooter, but there's a lot that he's doing that does look sustainable to me. And one, I think the team just looks a lot better. They're playing at a better pace. Like the big thing to me is, and I think what we've learned through these last 3 years with Zach, DeMar, and Vooch is it's great to have like these stop and slow it down methodical scorers in the half court. You need that, certainly in the playoffs, but like even end of game, even if like things get too frenetic in the second quarter, like you need somebody to come in and like take the ball and calm everybody down and like get into an offensive set and get a good shot. And it's really good that the Bulls have that. But I think it becomes a problem when you have three guys that are all on the floor doing that at the same time. And they're not fighting over the ball, but like they all stylistically kind of want to play the same way in the same spots on the floor. And it's just hard to do that. And so I think that there's been one, you get Io out there a little bit more. He's been pushing the pace. Coby's been pushing the pace. Julian Phillips has gotten some minutes and he's running up and down. Like you just get more of these athletes on the floor who do want to run. I think that balances things out. And I think it's a good lesson for AK to understand that, it's good to have those guys where you can play off of, the younger guys can play off of Vooch or DeMar in the half court, but it's also good to like have a little bit more speed and athleticism and willingness to move around off the ball. And I just think it's tough when you've got three guys on the court who do that together. So maybe that informs what AK is looking for in return for a Zach trade, but also just like moving forward. I mean, he's got some big decisions. You asked the question, like, what are we doing here? That's a question AK is going to have to answer. And is it going to be continue on with this group and try to bring back DeMar? Is it going to be, tear it down? And we can talk more about what that actually means to us. But this is an opportunity, I think, for AK to really get a sense of the talent on his team, what it looks like with a little bit more collective athleticism and speed. And I think that's a really good thing as long as they're playing well.
Agree, but I guess I wonder how much we're getting wrapped up in these three games, which
we're
I completely
absolutely
understand.
Getting wrapped up in these last three games.
And I can already feel it amongst the fan base, and I completely understand it. This has been a terrible, miserable season in many respects. Even last season was painful. So I get it. And I understand Coby doing this Coby stuff right now is cool and fun. The way Io and Pat is playing is very encouraging as well. The way the ball has been moving on offense whilst keeping the defensive intensity the way it has been over the last 3 to 5 games has been very interesting and fun. But I do look ahead. I am looking ahead and I'm a little concerned. And look, let's just focus on 3 to 4 weeks. Why? Let's keep it short term to some respects, but let's also use that timeline with Zach being out. Here's the games the Bulls have over the next 3 to 4 weeks. At San Antonio as of tomorrow. Then they've got on Monday at Milwaukee, on Tuesday, Denver, then 2 games in Miami, at Miami, at Miami. Then you're in Philadelphia. You play the Lakers thereafter. Okay, maybe you get a slight reprieve when you get the San Antonio Spurs back at the United Center, but thereafter you've got the Cavs, the Hawks, the Pacers, the Sixers, and then the Knicks. That takes you through to January 3. That's 13, 14, 15 games, something like that. That's a brutal stretch of games. That's the Zach LaVine 3 to 4 week timeline. It's the 3 to 4 week timeline, like you mentioned before, where AK gets that extended run of games to really assess what this team looks like post Zach or without Zach, let's say. But even without Zach, within those run of games, like I know this last 3 games has been good and fun, and I've certainly enjoyed watching the most part. Like yesterday's game was a tough watch. That was just a bad basketball game.
Terrible game.
Regardless of the outcome. The wins against Milwaukee and the Pelicans were fantastic to watch. Again, particularly in the light of what we've been dealing with this season. But the schedule is what it is, and it's about to get brutal. And I wonder how this team reacts through this schedule and what that schedule, or what the impacts of that schedule and the assessment that AK comes away with. Because I kind of feel like I have an idea or a sense of what this team is without Zach. I still don't think it's a very good team. I know they've won 3 games here. I think whether they want to or not, they're headed towards a rebuild. But I'm interested to understand or see what happens and what can actually be learned over the next 3 to 4 weeks. Because, okay, cool. You demolished in some respects the Hornets. You caught the Pelicans on the back end of a back-to-back. And to be fair, that win against the Bucks was a good win. But
But
what are you
the
going to do
Pelicans
here
were
over?
also missing CJ McCollum and Trey Murphy, and they've been playing really well with those guys back.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, there's like schedule wins and losses in there. I think for the most part, the Bulls are not as bad as their 5-14 start. Probably closer to that than they are to 3-0, but
Mhm.
they're gonna be somewhere in the middle. And I think, yeah, like I said, I think this is an opportunity to get a better sense of like what these, especially these younger players, are and what they can be, because that's really going to inform the decisions that AK makes. I mean, is he gonna continue to invest in them, or is he gonna continue to try to win and try to climb his way back up to that 10th spot?
Yeah, and look, talking about you touched on it before, like of these 3 games that we watched, like what's convincing, maybe what's not. I wanted to have a conversation about Coby White because I feel again coming back to my point around people getting maybe a little bit too excited, maybe more generally about this team over 3 games. But in addition to that, what Kobe's been doing, and I know this will fall on deaf ears in some regards because I have been a bit of a skeptic over the years. Even though I can admit what Kobe's doing right now has exceeded my expectations. But over the last 10 games, William, Kobe's taking 14 shots a game. 9 of those shots are from 3. So a heavy, heavy reliance on the 3-point shot right now. He's shooting damn near 48% on those threes. So obviously incredibly efficient. Yeah, he's making over 4 threes a game through this stretch of games. But what happens when those threes start to cool off a bit? What happens when he goes down from 48 to 38%? And to be fair, 38% would be a very good percentage. But I guess what I'm trying to ascertain, like, how much of this is a hot streak? Obviously, quite a bit of it would be my assessment. How much of the other stuff is sustainable? And what can he do? And what can the Bulls pivot to in the event the 3-point shot isn't humming the way it is? So I say all that to say that there's been a lot of things that Kobe has done this season, even before this hot streak, that I thought he was playing well. I know if we go back to the first 10 or so games, people were wanting to see a shift at point guard because Kobe's offense just wasn't there, but he was doing he was playing good defense and reading the floor well from that point guard position, and he's still doing those things now. But if that shooting cools off, do you think the narrative around Kobe right now, in the way that he's sort of taken the mantle off Zach, post Zach or without Zach, do you think people's opinions start to change if the shooting percentages start to fall a little bit?
I'll just say, like, Kobe's exploding right now. 9 games, he's shooting, basically 50, 40, 90,
Mhm.
and averaging 21 points per game. Like, that's Zach LaVine over the course of like 4 seasons, plus an additional 5 points.
Yeah.
And now he's putting up like similar numbers to Kobe on miserable efficiency. And so it's this kind of like perfect storm of like everything going right for Kobe and some of his younger guys over this 3 games, everything going wrong for Zach, from body language and trade stuff to his play on the floor, his shooting. Um, and I think that absolutely factors into this narrative. But I think I think there's some truth to this, is maybe a little bit closer to what Kobe can be. Like, I think he has improved in a lot of ways. Um, Obviously, he's shooting a ton of threes, but I think he's also getting downhill a lot and leveraging the threat of his 3-point shot to get into the paint, to kick it out. I think it's these small strides that he's been making since last year, end of last year, where he's snaking in pick and rolls. He's I think he's gotten much better in the mid range. He's got to work on his finishing, but the passing has improved. Um, and also the defense, just top to bottom. He's definitely going to be the guy that gets hunted against a lot of teams late game because he's the smallest, and probably the weakest link on that end on the Bulls. But I think he's improved a lot. The effort is much better. The awareness and off ball stuff is much better. He's taken a lot of charges. He said his goal is to lead the team in charges this year, but that's going to be tough because Alex Caruso is on the team. So yeah, I think he's improved a lot. I think there used to be a point where it was like, if Kobe's not really hot right now, he's actively hurting you. And now I feel like if he's not super hot, he's like closer to neutral. Maybe not quite there, but I think he's like trending the right way. And so to me, he's definitely proven that he can be productive. But also you have to remember, like, he had a pretty tough stretch for the first 15 games. And is that closer to who Kobe is and what he will be moving forward? And that's why I say this opportunity for the next 3-4 weeks is really important for Coby because he needs to prove that he can do this for more than 9 games in a row. I mean, that's a very small fraction of the season on the whole. And I think if he is going to be like a fixture of this next iteration of the Bulls, he needs to extend that kind of play beyond 9 games. And like I said, he's not going to shoot 50, 40, 90. He's not going to be like leading the league in threes over 10 game stretch periods for the rest of his career. So what else is he giving you? Is he helping you in other ways? Is he moving well off the ball? Is he defending? Is he playmaking and passing? Is he playing off of guys well? And that kind of changes the geometry of the floor and how defenses guard him. Like there's a lot that has to continue to go right. And to his credit, it has gone right of late. But to me, when you consider that first really down stretch, and now he's kind of like back up on top of his game again, like I need to see some more consistency and I need to see some higher lows from him. It can't get to the point where he's just like really, really bad and hurting you, because then you can never know what to expect. And I think if the Bulls are going to move forward with him as more of a featured piece, he has to be more consistent.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you noted there. So I do think his baseline has changed, and the worst Coby White game now is significantly better than what it used to be, to the point where you can still have him out there because you can trust his defense, you can trust his ability to read the floor and react on the floor and do those sorts of things. So don't get me wrong, people who are listening to this, when I say as much, but I just have found it interesting, I suppose, how maybe opinions have changed on Coby based on a short sample. And as a connection to that, maybe the opinions of this Bulls season, this Bulls younger core, where this team is going more generally, has flipped very quickly based on a small sample size. And I say all that to bring it back to the schedule, because I think in so many ways, in so many different ways, we're going to find out who this team really is over the next 3 to 4 weeks. It lines up with the Zach injury, but like I said before, there's a tough schedule coming up, and it'll be interesting to see how Coby works through that, how the rest of this the younger guys work through that, how Zach, DeMar, Caruso, etc. fit into the whole thing as we move forward. We're going to continue talking about that. I want to have a conversation about rebuilding. Surprise, surprise. William and I are tankers. We are rebuilders. That's just where naturally we want to go with it. But I think we want to expand on that a little bit more and dive into that thinking a little bit more. But before we do, William, can you tell everyone about Midtown, the athletic club?
Oh, do you mean one of the nicest fitness clubs in all of the city of Chicago? That would be Midtown Athletic Club.
I was going to say, it's not just one of, it is the nicest.
You're right. I misspoke. It is the nicest. And I've been in a lot of good gyms. I've been in Equinox. I've been in, some really East Bank Club. Like Midtown kind of puts them all to shame. And it has some of the best features. They've got incredible locker rooms. They've got wet and dry saunas, amazing outdoor and indoor pools, as well as hot tubs. They've got fitness studios, and then they have a ton of classes. They've got high intensity interval training, yoga, boxing, cycling, CrossFit, group exercise. They've got tennis courts. They've got great basketball courts, pickleball, paddle tennis, just incredible amount of amenities. And they have multiple locations all across the Chicagoland areas. They've got one in Palatine in the northwest suburbs, Bannockburn in the North Shore, Willowbrook in the southwest burbs, and of course the Bucktown and Lincoln Park area Midtown Athletic Club and Hotel, which is right by me. I'll be stopping by there at some point to shoot some hoops. We're going to have a tour of the facilities. I know some of our colleagues here, Herb and Hogue and Carm have gone to check it out and just have rave reviews. So if you are interested in joining or finding a tour of the Midtown Athletic Club, head over to midtown.com/CHGO to find out more.
Well, I mentioned before, William, that I haven't been eating well this year, and Factor is going to hook me up in that regard. And I certainly haven't been to a gym that often this year, as my waistline can attest to. So I wish I had access.
Maybe that means you have to move to Chicago and join Midtown Athletic Club.
I might have to do that. I might also have to move to Chicago to access our friends at ComEd, who are helping make it easier for businesses to switch to electric vehicles, William. That's something we can all get behind. I'm sure we can all agree on that. So for the health of the planet and for the well-being of all of us to share it, like that's something we all need to be doing, right?
Absolutely, Mark. The electric grid is evolving to meet your cleaner energy needs. As we all have moved forward with confidence towards an electric tomorrow, whether you have one delivery van or a whole fleet of shipping trucks, ComEd can help guide you to make changes that make sense.
Definitely. So what should business owners be doing, William?
They should be going to comed.com/clean to learn more about resources, fleet rebates, and infrastructure incentives available to help businesses and go electric. If you own a business, don't wait. Start making your plan today to switch to electric vehicles. Good for business, good for the planet, good for all of us. Go to comed.com/clean.
Did you say comed.com/clean?
That's exactly what I said. Go now and see how going electric connects us to make a better way of doing business and a better future for generations to come.
There you go. Look, speaking for myself, and I don't think you'll mind me saying this too, we're not the best of ad readers, but I think today we've been okay.
Absolutely not.
I think we've been okay today. Possible.
I'm definitely the lowest common denominator when it comes to or what is it, like the tide carries the shitty ad readers or whatever. I don't know. I'm trash.
No, I contest that. I think I am significantly worse, but I think we both brought a solid B.
We're having
plus
fun
today.
here. We're just having fun here at the CHGO Bulls show.
Exactly. Do you know what else makes me just fun and enjoying my time? Talking about tearing down the Chicago Bulls. Like that is just an enjoyable experience to me. So let's talk rebuilds, because I kind of feel like we're there whether the Bulls want to be there or not. And this is going to be, I think, a contentious topic. It already is. I've experienced this today online, and I understand some of it. I understand that maybe the organization doesn't want to head down this path. Certainly our tourist kind of service in the offseason mentioned that a rebuild is not on the cards. But I can't help but think, with an aging roster and few blue chip prospects on this team, that you're kind of organically heading there anyway. I mean, you're kind of there now when you've got the 8th worst record in the league. So, yeah, I wanted to talk rebuilding, William. But I think what we need to do first is define what we consider a rebuild, because I think this is the problem with the discourse around rebuilding. Everyone has their own definition of what a rebuild, what a tank means to them, what it involves. And every side of the argument will point to an example that worked. And obviously the counter argument will be, well, you could end up like the Philadelphia 76ers or whomever it might be. Like, that's a good example, given that, they've got Joel Embiid and a whole bunch of other good players and are the top of the East. But the point being is, we're going to be talking a lot about rebuilding going forward, whether the Bulls like it or not, because I kind of feel like that's where the org is going, whether they like it or not. So maybe for you, William, you could state what you mean, or what a rebuild means to you.
Well, I think the first thing, before you even start to think about like avenues and pathways and all this stuff, is like, is there anything that the Bulls could do for the rest of the season realistically that would change my mind about who they are? And I don't think the answer is yes. I mean, let's say they trade Zach for like Kevin Huerter and Harrison Barnes and a pick, and they just start rattling off wins, and they win 45 games and are competitive in a first round series. To me, that's just like playing for mediocrity. I mean, that's like striving for the middle. You give yourself no upside. And while I think that's like fine in the short term, it's more exciting than, watching the team go 5-14 and be on pace for 22 wins. Like, I just don't see where that gets you. And to me, like, the idea of building a basketball team is to try to be as competitive as possible. And if as competitive as possible means maybe getting into the playoffs as an 8th seed, then like, that's where I come back to the question that you asked earlier, which is like, what are we doing here? So to me, I don't see a way where they like convince me that there's something more here. That's like, some sort of untouched, potential, untouched potential that they can get to. So I think at that point you do have to like look at rebuilds. And obviously I've been very vocal about that. And what that means to me, to answer your question, is like, I think fundamentally you have to shift from a priority on today to a priority on tomorrow. You have to shift to a priority on the younger players at the expense of, investing in wins right now. And to me, even like these last couple of games, like you see the way that they're trying to win. Yes, Kobe's had some good games. Yes, Iowa's been impactful. Yes, Patrick looks like he's competent. But at the end of the day, it's like Vooch and DeMar show and guys playing off of them. And I just don't know what is the point of that, because the ceiling is going to be lower without Zach. It just is. Yes, they've been playing better. If you actually want to be competitive, you need your best players out there. And maybe there's like a little dead cat bounce where they, are playing better without him. If they actually want to compete in the playoffs or even get there, like they need their best players. And so absolutely, I'm on board with the rebuild. And I think, like I said, that means just prioritizing the future. And to me, obviously, I think Zach is going to get traded here. I think they need to prioritize longer term value in any deal. So younger players and picks. I'm not really sure if they can achieve that in this marketplace. Like they kind of missed on the opportunity to sell high. And now I think they're just going to like try not to dump him. Quite frankly, I mean, it feels like that's kind of where they are. So like any future pick, any young players is probably a win. But then beyond that, I think that's where the questions really start. Like the Zach drama is like a matter of when, not if. And so the bigger questions are like, what do you do with DeMar and what do you do with Caruso? And I'll start with Caruso. You sent me a message today. Should I tweet this? And you said,
don't repeat it.
Basically something to the effect of not trading Caruso at the peak of his value would be like the worst thing that Karnisovas could do. And I 100% agree. That is malpractice, in my opinion.
There were a few other words in there, but
there were some choice words. I'm opting to exclude those from this conversation, but I do think that is malpractice. I think it completely misses the point of it proves to me that he prioritizes winning now, and it at the expense of the future. It proves to me that he's not interested in the game of value and asset management, which is, I think, probably the whole job when it comes to being a head of basketball operations. This idea that like the front office watches games like fans, like that's not a good thing. I know that they've like said that they really care with wins and losses. To me, that's like not a good thing because it tells me that they're not thinking big picture. And that's the job. So I think Caruso is the single most important thing that Karnisovas has to do right now. I've said this a couple of times. Like people around the league have told me that the Bulls can get a good young player and a pick for Caruso. That is more than they're going to get for LaVine. That will help set up the Bulls longer term. And I think more than that, it's like, what are we doing here with Caruso? Like leading this team to a couple extra wins so that they're, a 35 win team instead of a 32 win team. It just doesn't really make sense to me why you wouldn't capitalize on a guy like that who's 29 years old, who's got a year and a half left on his contract, who you're going to have to pay if you don't trade him, who, by the way, is like super injury prone and his value may never be higher. I understand what he brings to this team. There's probably no bigger proponent of Caruso and as far as like people championing his value than me, but I just think for like where this team is, keeping him makes zero sense. And I think I'm not going to say like they're not going to do it, but it sounds like they're more focused on Zach. It sounds like they want to kind of see how things go before they decide on that. To me, that would be just a complete disaster. It'd be malpractice. And the DeMar situation, here's the other thing. Not trading Caruso, now it's not like you could just get the same for him next year. It's like his value could go way down. And we've seen that happen with Zach, and we've seen that happen with Vooch, and we've seen that happen with DeMar. And I think he really needs to learn those lessons. At this point, like DeMar's probably not going to get you anything. Maybe there's a couple of teams that would want his bird rights that might give you a little something for an expiring contract that then they could retain using his bird rights. So maybe you get something. To me, it's like you probably keep him at this point unless you do feel like there's value out there, just because he does really help some of the young guys. You saw in that Pelicans game how they can play off of him. And I think there's value in that. But if there is any other value on the market for him, I would much rather trade him. And then if you don't, then you're kind of in a position where you are forced to re-sign him the way you did with Vooch. And now you're just kicking the can down the road again. So I think priorities for me are getting a great return for Zach as best as possible, trading Caruso at basically to the highest bidder, and then either trading DeMar or being comfortable with letting him walk this summer, because it's better than continuing to attach, your horse to the Vooch and DeMar show as they enter their mid to late 30s.
Yeah, look, to no one's surprise, I agree with William take, who saw that coming. But the way that I rationalize this, like, the entire thinking should be about maximizing value for the next iteration of team and doing whatever makes sense by following that simple ethos. Like, that needs to be the goal. Now, your example before, whereby maybe this team turns it around and wins 45 games and maybe gets to the playoffs and is a decent first round out type team. If that were to come because Pat made a leap throughout the season, or Coby or Io or one of these young guys takes a leap, then cool. But like your example there, like if you trade Zach for role guys, and you're trying to quote unquote win now and keep this thing going, trying to be a 500-ish team, and it's more so the vets that are getting you there, and the vets are standing in the way of your Cobys, your Pats, etc., that's very problematic. I also do think that the best way to maximize value right now is by trading Alex Caruso. He's giving management an out that they maybe didn't think they had. You traded away several picks to acquire Vooch and DeMar. Caruso can help you sort of, reset or regain an actual positive plus surplus in assets should you be able to deal him for a tasty deal. And all reporting suggests that based on demand and supply, you're going to be able to get something nice for Alex Caruso back. So I understand this idea of keeping him around and having him, nurture and build a culture around these younger guys. But even then, like, I'm not even convinced that these younger guys are the right younger guys to really move forward with as well. So you have to be even thinking beyond Coby, Pat, and Io, because who knows if they're the guys? I don't think they are. I've said that I think they could be, decent role guys in the way Cole Anthony and Jalen Suggs and Wendell Carter can be good role guys.
But you still
we
need
our
Paolo,
Paolo, we need our friends. You don't have that. And keeping Caruso around is not going to enable you that. And I understand the consternations about trading Caruso, that the pick that you may get back for Alex Caruso may not be a better player for Caruso, but that's not the point. The point is, when can you maximize value around Caruso? And if you're not convinced that you're going to retain him post this current contract, or you're going to assign him an extension, then sell him now whilst your team is seemingly going one way down the standings, and maximize value in doing so. Do the same with DeMar and Vooch if it's possible. I think that's less possible for the reasons you noted. But if you have to keep a vet or two around just to make sure it's not completely bad and wasteful and, it being a silly rebuild, then fine. But this idea that you need to maintain and keep Caruso around and trade for more vets and try to keep this thing going as if the younger guys that you already have here are enough or sustainable enough to really lift this team up for the next iteration, like, I just can't get with that. And maybe that changes over the next 3 to 4 weeks. Like I said, the schedule is what it is. And if Coby and Pat and Io, etc., show me some stuff that I'm not expecting, then maybe my opinion changes. But right now, I'm looking at a team that is still very bad. I'm looking at Alex Caruso, who's having a career season, who's going to be 30 in next March or April, whatever it is, and only has one more year left on his deal, is often injured, and his value is never going to be higher. So how is this even a conversation? I don't understand, but seemingly it is.
Yeah, and I think you kind of alluded to a really good point, which is like, it is good to have some veterans around who can still be productive. I think that's something that the Bulls really did not do during their last rebuild, and that probably hindered the growth of Lowry. Like, we saw how much better he got when he started playing with Mike Conley, and like, I think that kind of playmaker and facilitator and somebody who young guys can play off of would really help them. So I think Vooch is that guy. Like, you're not going to trade Vooch. You can't. Nobody's going to take him on right now. So you may as well play through him a little bit more, and just like have him be the slow it down guy that guys are running around off of. You can kind of get away with doing that with both him and DeMar, but like, you also saw Vooch's, production went way down when DeMar got back in the lineup. So I do think it's good to have those guys. Like, you still have Torrey Craig, you still have Javon Carter, and maybe those guys are, flippable assets. I just think you have to prioritize figuring out what is best for your future at this point. Because like I said, even if you win 45 games, like your upside is first round and that's it. So you have to start thinking about the best ways to maximize your future. And capitalizing on an asset when it's at its peak value is the only way to do that. Maybe you get lucky in the lottery. Maybe some of these guys start to really hit. That's all great, but like you still have to be doing your job to maximize what assets you have, and that's part of it. Caruso is a massive part of the culture. He's a coach on the floor. He's telling guys what to do. He's defending his ass off. He's hitting game-winning threes. Like, I understand how good he is and how important he is, but right now shouldn't be as important as the future. And I think in order to give yourself the best chance moving forward, you have to prioritize the younger guys. You have to put the ball in their hand a little bit more. You have to build up their confidence, and you have to see if they are guys worth keeping around, because you have decisions to make about Patrick. You only have Coby and Io for 3 years, and that's 2 more after this. So, I think the priority has to be the young guys and development, and it has to be thinking about the future, replenishing the asset base as much as possible, because even if you do think you're going somewhere right now, it's not going to last, because who knows if DeMar resigns, if he wants to come back. Who knows if Coby and Pat and I are going to continue to play at this level. There's just no real way to know that. And I think you have to control what you can control, to take a cliche from all these basketball teams. Like, you have to put yourself in the best position. You can't be worried about how all these other teams operate and what they do.
Well said. I think the Bulls need to maximize their own return and value, William, but our listeners certainly can via DraftKings as well. Do you mind telling everyone about that before we close today's show?
Well, in the NBA, the game can change in an instant. Could be a sick Halliburton pass to a corner three to put the Pacers up against the Bucks in the final 90 seconds of the in-season tournament semifinals, or it could be a Zach LaVine trade that comes out of nowhere. Who knows? But no matter how the action unfolds, DraftKings Sportsbook has your back. This week, new customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets for just $5 on basketball. Win or lose, you get the instant dub. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code CHGO. New customers get $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on basketball, only on DraftKings Sportsbook using promo code CHGO. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. Please play responsibly. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of the Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, must be 21 or older in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gambling resources. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Terms at sportsbook.com, sportsbook.draftkings.com/basketball terms.
Whew. That was another great ad read. That's another
Thanks,
B
dude.
plus ad read. We have delivered today, friends. We are making money for CHGO. That was a great.
We're capitalizing on value, baby.
What a way to end that show. I was the whole time you were sort of progressing through those telephone numbers. I was like, oh, he's going to stumble here. He's not, but no, he kept coming up clutch here. Right at the end of the podcast, delivering an absolutely great ad read. Thank you, William, for delivering that for DraftKings. We've got NHK20 in here saying Mark and William are the rebuild kings. I'll take that one.
I'm the minister of the trade machine. Excuse you very much.
Minister of the trade machine. Well, there you go. Well, the minister of the trade machine and David Matthew will be back tomorrow for a post game. The Bulls are in San Antonio tomorrow. Well, that'll be an interesting game. Get to see the Bulls playing Wemby. I'm assuming Wemby's playing. I'm hoping he's playing, but potential to keep this thing rolling, to turn a 3-game win streak to 4. Let's see how it all plays out, but the guys will be back tomorrow. But appreciate everyone for tuning in. On your way out here on YouTube, hit the like button. Do that for us, friends. If you're listening via Apple, Spotify, wherever it might be, obviously 5-star reviews. Why would you give us anything less? I couldn't imagine why, particularly after all these great, fantastic, amazing ad reads. Only 5-star reviews. But William, where can people find you?
On Twitter at Will_Gottlieb.
There you go. You can catch us at CHGO_Bulls on Twitter. Obviously, jump on the website, allchgo.com. I'm at MK Hoops on Twitter, telling people that Caruso needs to be traded now, and anyone who disagrees is silly. But other than that, like I said, the boys will be back tomorrow. We'll be talking Bulls versus Spurs, and let's see if that number 4 win comes around, But I appreciate everyone for tuning into this HQ edition of CHGO Bulls. William and I will speak to you next week, but let's go and grab number 4. See you then. Bye, fans.
We all silly like the mayor.